What do you think about the Laker team now?
You follow the box scores of the games every day?
Just the Lakers.
You're kidding. That is really a compliment. I was pleased to see you smile at the top of our show because once the game starts, you have a game face. You don't smile much out there.
I don't think you have to do things for money anymore.
Correct.
What's up, Laker fans? Welcome to a special weekend edition of the Laker Film Room podcast. I'm Pete, joined by Darius, with reports that the Lakers will be signing Christian Koloko to a two-way contract. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about him as a player and a little bit about the Lakers' management of the 5 spot, because I think this signing provides a little bit of resolution to the summer-long conversation that we've had about what are the Lakers going to do at the 5. Just up top, this is going to be a shorter pod, but we're still contractually obligated to ad breaks. That's going to be annoying. We're going to talk for like 7-8 minutes and then go to break and then come back. Sorry about that. It'll just be for this one. But D, I think that we needed a defensive guy that can just help get us through. And he was the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year a couple of years ago. He was picked 2 picks before Max Christie in the 2022 draft, right at the beginning of the second round. Came here from Cameroon in 2017, played in LA in Birmingham High School, and then later Sierra Canyon out in the valley on the western part of LA County, and then went to Arizona for a couple of years where, like I said, he was the Defensive Player of the Year before he declared for the 2022 draft. He only played 1 season. He missed all of last year with a blood clot issue, of which I don't know any of the details about that. We won't get into it on there. But as part of him returning, he's going to have to go through a certain fitness to play process that we're going to operate under the assumption that he passes that for this pod, but while knowing that he might not. And so, D, talk to me a little bit about first impressions of the Lakers signing Christian Koloko.
Yeah, so just to clarify too, Pete, there is a fitness panel. Blood clots are a thing that, just from a medical standpoint, like my mom has gotten blood clots like in the past, and so I know a little bit about this. But when you get a blood clot, they put you on blood thinners. And when you're put on blood thinners, you are prone to bleed more easily because your blood is thinner. And so if you get cut, you'll bleed a lot more and a lot faster. But also, if you play a contact sport, you can develop internal bleeding, which is very problematic and could lead to very serious health issues and health problems. Famously, a bunch of athletes have had to retire when they've had recurring blood clot issues, including Chris Bosh, who might be one of the most famous NBA players who had this circumstance develop. And so it's a very serious thing. There's a reason why there's like a fitness panel that's going to be full of doctors that are going to determine if you're actually good to go or not, and are okay to return. People were in my mentions earlier saying that apparently he's been off of blood thinners for a little while, and that sort of progress has allowed him to start to begin that process of making a return to the NBA. And obviously, if he's signing a contract, he's under the impression that ultimately he's going to be able to play. And so all of that sort of portends and projects in a certain direction, which is why I think we're operating under the assumption that they've made this signing. It's likely under the idea that he's going to be able to play basketball this season. The Lakers do have a full roster. And so he is signed to a 2-way contract because the Lakers already had 3 players under 2-way contracts. They're going to have to waive one of their players who was on a 2-way as well. So that's all of the like logistical stuff out of the way. I wanted to make sure that we hit as much of that as we could. Koloko as a player. So I was not very familiar with him, Pete. I remember seeing him play a little bit with the Raptors. So I dove into the tape and started to watch clips just to sort of get a sense of like what he looked like as a player. And bigger than I remembered, just in terms of his height, his length, his wingspan. He was just taking up a lot of space, kind of a run and jump athlete, but not as much of an athlete as like a Jackson Hayes, for example. And the difference in athleticism between a player like Hayes and a player like Koloko is why one of them will get drafted in the lottery and one of them might slip to the second round. He's an intriguing guy to me, Pete. Like, runs the floor pretty hard and understands how to move defensively. I had texted you and Mike, and I started out watching his offensive clips. And I was just like, oh boy, like this kid's raw offensively. He was losing the ball a fair amount. He was getting his shot blocked more than what you would have thought for a player of his height and size and length, and someone who does have the athletic ability that he has. So I was watching clips, and I started them very early in the season and then was progressing more. I was just like, okay, he's getting more comfortable here. And he started to look better. And then I went to the defensive clips, and I was just like, oh, okay, I see it a little bit more now. And some of the stiffness that was there offensively in terms of like managing the ball, some of that was alleviated when he doesn't have to worry about catching the ball or doing or making an offensive move. And I was intrigued by how he moved his feet, how he slid his feet, and how he was able to keep appropriate distance between him and the ball handler or him and the player that he was defending in order to utilize his physical skills. He is, based off of what I saw from the lone season that he did play, he is very far ahead defensively than he is offensively. And that's something that I think the Lakers desperately needed, Pete, is a guy who that's the side of the ball where he feels most comfortable, and that's the side of the ball where he can actually do something to impact the game. And so offensively, I think that he can be a player who gets a dump off pass and finishes, or goes to the offensive glass and finishes. And he can be a transition player. I think all of the stuff that you would expect of sort of like a rim running big, he can do some of that stuff. Short roll guy, pocket pass guy, less of that. His screening technique did not look as polished as I would have liked for a player his like his size. He was reaching a lot and playing sort of outside of his base a lot when he was setting screens. And so offensively, I think that he's a big lump of clay, but defensively, more of that is refined for me. I'm wondering what you saw, though.
Let's take a break and come back. I'll give my thoughts on Koloko. Defensively, I really like his closing speed on block shots, the ability to just sort of cover distance and recover. I think he's a better help side shot blocker. You know, somebody gets beat off the dribble, I rotate over and protect the rim. But that is exactly the type of guy that I've been hoping for. And I'll get into sort of like the management of the offseason in a moment. But on the offensive end, he's going to need to be spoon-fed. He doesn't have good hands, like you said, just fairly low skilled player. He's not going to post up that often. If he does, it's going to be a jump hook over his left shoulder with his right hand, most likely. Like you said, very raw on the offensive end. But with the construction of the rest of this Lakers team, you don't need a guy to be good at everything. And with vet mins, my thought on them is that if you're going to get a vet min, you're probably going to get a player who's good at one thing. Because if they were good at two things, they're probably going to make more than the vet min. And so Jackson Hayes is an example of this, where he's really good as a roll guy, as a leaper, and actually does a couple of other things where I think he'll be making more than the vet min at some point in the not too distant future. But he's limited enough in enough other areas to where that's why he makes the vet min. And so my argument is that if the market shakes out to where you can't trade for, say, a $10 million guy, that you would love to be able to put alongside Anthony Davis, that you can go to war against Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets and all that. That's great. You're not going to get that on a two-way contract guy and Christian Koloko. But if you can't do that, what are you going to do to address the fact that you need more than one defensive player at the 5 spot aside from AD? And that has been driving me crazy for 2 years, D. Our approach to the 5 spot, we have valued ball skills, scoring ability, offensive talent with those vet min type of deals. And to me, you just need a balance. We already have Jackson Hayes, who's a good offensive player, an excellent lob threat, somebody who can really efficiently do one job that's very important. If you're going to go the vet min route, make sure that you have a defensive guy in one of the other spots. And I feel like the Lakers managed this very well because they've given themselves 2 bites at the apple with this, with both Koloko and Kyler Kelly, who they're bringing in on an E10. Now, one's on a 2-way, one's on an E10. Koloko is going to be ahead. I really like this in that it checks that short-term box, but also a long-term box as well. And that in this whole vein of player development, let's get a defensive 5 in there and develop him too and see where we're at in a couple years.
So I want to comment on the roster build stuff that's been going on for years now, right? Because after the Lakers won the championship with JaVale and Dwight, JaVale was sort of like a hybrid big in that like he was a guy who chased block shots and he was a guy who chased lobs. And so he was very much like the same sort of player on both sides of the ball.
He was a two-way player, kind of imperfect, but he could do things on both sides of the ball for sure.
Yeah, well, his physical tools are...
I mean, elite lob threat, right? But he was a much better defender than Hayes.
Yes, for sure. And then Dwight, obviously, we know Dwight's defensive pedigree. He won, 2 or 3 consecutive Defensive Player of the Year awards. He's probably one of the better defensive players of his entire generation. That group won the title. After that, I would argue that they went after Montrezl Harrell and Marc Gasol. Now, Marc was very good on defense. Like, he was not prime Marc Gasol, but he had that defensive tilt to his game. But that's not why the Lakers got him, Pete. The Lakers got him, and they were viewing him through an offensive lens as a floor spacer, a guy. Remember, the Lakers started running a lot of like delay actions in order to take advantage of Marc Gasol as like a passer at the high post, and they were doing a lot of stuff offensively to play to Marc Gasol. And then it was Andre Drummond, and then it was all of these other dudes who was just like, you like to score or be an offensive player.
Thomas Bryant, Damian Jones, Christian Wood, Jackson Hayes. The last 2 years, especially, every vet min guy that we've had has been better on offense than they are on defense.
100%. And so is Koloko going to be this high-level defense? Like, that's not what we're talking about here. The idea is, though, that him being someone who clearly is ahead defensively and is clearly going to try to be a defender first rather than an offensive player first, that is something the Lakers desperately need. I would love if they could get that player who even makes more than a vet min, who that's sort of what his identity is.
Me too.
Right?
The story isn't over, but I feel like they built a bridge to the regular season. Like, they did what they could, which I respect.
100%. I totally agree with that. And so I, again, am happy with this as a step in the right direction, because the Lakers have a fair amount of uncertainty. And with Wood being hurt, especially, to me, this is sort of the avenue for a player like Koloko to come in and basically say, we need another big just active on the roster. And I wasn't ready for that player to be Colin Castleton.
He does different things. He's an on-ball player that can handle the ball a bit, grab and go, push the ball up court, but it's just, that's not the skill set that's needed on a team that has ball handler after ball handler. That to me is the skill set that we've over-indexed on so much over the last couple of years. Is not everybody has to be a talented on-ball player that can score in a half dozen different ways. It's like, you need a certain amount of those guys for sure, but a guy who can block a shot and run the floor and do the dirty work that isn't so good at that, that's fine when you got 3 other dudes on the court who can.
I totally agree. And with Wood being out, I think Koloko's going to have a chance, like on a 2-way, to basically be active in a lot of games. And if he gets a chance to go out there and like play a little bit and play with like real lineups and not just garbage time lineups, or even just in garbage time show that he's willing to play hard and be a serious basketball player, which there was not a lot of seriousness in those parts of the game last season. So I'm intrigued by this as just an idea as much as like what Koloko can do as like a guy who was drafted pretty high in the second round just a season ago and then fell on some bad health. So let's go to break here. And when we come back, I'd like to sort of bridge the gap on some other roster stuff related to Koloko and Wood. So, Pete, this is like on topic, but not all the way on topic, right? I had texted you guys earlier about, hey, would you open up a roster spot by like stretching and waiving a Christian Wood or stretching and waiving a Cam Reddish? Because Koloko is on a 2-way deal. And I'm still looking for a roster spot to be opened. And ultimately, the roster spot I'm looking to open is for a player of Koloko's archetype. It'd be jumping the gun too much to say I want to open a roster spot for Christian Koloko. But I do want a roster spot opened. And one of the reasons why I want a roster spot opened is to be able to have a viable third big on the team who can serve this exact purpose. And if it is Koloko, great.
He's too young for it to be at the higher levels, I think. He's a really good developmental guy and somebody who can help get us through 82. But I think the type of guy you're talking about is the Dwight 2020 type of guy who can do it in the Western Conference Finals. I think we can open up a roster spot when we need to and when that guy makes themselves available. I just don't think that's going to happen until at least 12-15. And so the Lakers have immediate short-term problems where, forgive me for pulling your question out of the future tense and sort of a hypothetical who could be this guy we've got kind of a tough schedule to start the season. We're going to need to win some games. And one thing I want to pivot to is I really like the unit that the Lakers have at the 5 spot. And this is what I mean. You have Anthony Davis as the starting 5, and then you have 2 vet mins behind him. I would love to have a better player than a vet min, but if you're going to go down that route, I think it's important to be able to play the same way, but with different types of players. And with both Hayes and Koloko, they both run their ass off. That's one thing that I noticed. I'd hear LeBron yelling at Wood to run. That was one thing I heard on multiple occasions. It was like, go, see Wood, that's what he called him. Go, go, go. But he was always on his ass about like running in transition. You don't have to worry about that with Hayes. You don't have to worry about that with Koloko. They're similar in this respect. They can play the same way. They can both run their asses off, but one's offensively tilted while the other's more defensively tilted.
The thing I was watching first off when I started to watch Koloko defensive clips was pick and roll stuff. One of the things that I noticed was that he was almost always in a drop, and Nick Nurse did not have him pressure and play up at the level of the ball too often. Like, he would engage right below the level of the screen, so it was not a deep drop. It was not the drop of the Mike Budenholzer, Darvin Ham style drop where you're literally conceding an 18-foot jumper. He would be there as a guy who was, I'm here, and showing the ball handler, like, you can't just shoot this ball. But he was very good at then backpedaling and then recovering to his man. The interesting thing is that it takes such a high-level defender to then still be able to get back to the ball handler when he decides I'm going to shoot. And so I saw clip after clip where these guards were sort of just like, okay, you left me. Now I'm putting the speed on and I'm trying to get to the basket, and just a lot of good finishes where then Koloko will be like, oh, I got to go contest this. And then they're finishing over what looks like a good contest, but they're NBA guards. And so guess what?
Sure.
They make that shot a lot. And so my point in saying that is that I thought he had pretty good technique as a drop coverage player. I also saw good offense beating that more times than what you would want to see offense beating that sort of coverage. So it was like, oh, I see why you're good on defense. And then also, oh, I see why NBA players are the best players in the world because they continue to make shots. I say all of that just to add to the idea that I think he can play in that style of defense. And if he has enough support around him, the Lakers can win possessions. I would love to see a few minutes a game of him actually playing next to Anthony Davis and just being like, oh, look, AD is doing something crazy here, on the perimeter or as the second help guy.
Or even just taking a few minutes off where he doesn't have to be just the man on both ends of the floor. That to me is the main thing with AD is the volume of it is, can there be times where we don't need him to be Superman and we can still run a decent drop coverage?
I agree. I think AD would agree as well. There was an article, and I don't know if you saw it. It was Dave McMenamin's latest piece on the Lakers, and I think it was 4 or 5 questions, and it talked some about LeBron shooting and a couple of other topics. But one of the things he brought up was Anthony Davis and AD, again reiterating the fact that he'd like to play more minutes with a second big man, and whether or not that's Koloko or whether or not it's Jackson Hayes. I'd like to see AD get more of those minutes that he's been pining for. And we've seen him thrive next to other bigs just as recently as this summer for Team USA, where he was playing obviously next to a great big in Bam Adebayo. But the formula is something that AD is used to.
Couple notes to close out. He's a little bit below average as a rebounder, which will matter. And then in his only year as a rookie, he defended 71 shots at the rim, surrendering 45% on those shots, which put him in the 89th percentile around the league. Really excited that the Lakers, I think, managed this about as well as they could under the current circumstances, but more work to do on this front. I just think they built a bridge to maybe another early season win or two in a game they might not have otherwise. All right, this is fun. We'll be back on Monday, but until then, you've been listening to Laker Film Room Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.
James has got it in low to McHale. McHale wants to turn. He's double teamed. Just pass out in front. Broken up by Worthy. Tip to Magic. Worthy dies on his belly. Magic scores.
There's Magic got it. Magic fires again. They will. Lakers win the game. The Lakers win the game. Rebound of Lonnie. 3 seconds left. Van Exel to win it. It's on the way. Good.
Kobe Bryant, 48 points, 16 rebounds. Shot with his 8th block shot that ties an NBA Finals record.
A lot of Laker fans sticking around for this.
You're seeing something that's very rare indeed. A Laker to get MVP chance
in Boston. Of all places.
Are you kidding me?
Kobe, hard to believe.
Are you kidding me? Unreal. Are you kidding me?
Lakers looking to push. Bryant spinning in the lane. Back for Gasol. Pretty pass. And it's back to a 3-point game.
Kobe Bryant picked up by Bell.
There's the move.
2, 1.
Listen. Unbelievable. For the victory. It's over.
Shot clock now to 5. Bryant. Yes. And that was a little tap to Alvin Gentry. Add insult to injury, Kobe. I mean, what a shot. I mean, you can't defend that. Are you kidding me? 2.1 seconds remaining. Denver a foul to give. Jokic trying to disrupt Rondo. He puts it in. Here's Davis, 4-3 in the win. Oh, it's good! Anthony Davis has won it for the Lakers! James again. Oh, he hits another one. LeBron James putting together a closing quarter against the Nuggets. This historic 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers conquer the bubble, and banner number 17 will soon hang in the rafters.